So our last theme of Unit 1 as we're transitioning here to get ready for our Unit 1 test is going to deal with sectional conflict, or what we like to call sectionalism. Okay, we've already learned about a few things that we have seen in this map here. Okay, we saw how we've acquired all this territory out here. Okay, and as we were moving west as a country, that whole manifest destiny theme, we're acquiring all this land, but there was also a lot of conflict going on between North and South. Okay, and if you see right here, the color coded areas here, everything is revolving around slavery. Okay, that blue area. Okay, close of slavery by the Missouri Compromise. If you remember learning about that. Okay, it said that Missouri would be admitted as a slave state, Maine would be admitted as a free state. Okay, and then anything above this 3630 line would be free. Anything south would be slave. Okay. Now, what this map does not include was all of the land gained via Mexico. Okay, the Texas area, the Texas Republic. Okay, the Texas kind of gaining their independence and standing alone as a country or as their own republic for a while. The war with Mexico and how we acquired all this land out here. If you remember the California gold rush and going out there and claiming land out there. Okay. Area open for slavery before statehood was put in was that Arkansas territory. And as we continued to move west, all right, and acquiring all these lands and those conflicts and those discussions with Mexico and Spain and, everything that was kind of tied in there along the way. Okay. You have this line in the sand here. North should be free, South should be slave. Okay. And we had all these disputes along the way. Okay. And we see our southern states where slavery was, our northern states where you were free. Okay. Regardless of who you were. All right. We had a lot of abolitionist movements in the front. We had a lot of pro-slavery movements in the South. So one of the big things that we're going to learn about in our activity coming up here in a little bit is what do we do with this open area? Because a long story short, people aren't going to accept the Missouri Compromise when we get up into these areas. Okay. And we're basically now on a crash course for a potential civil war. Okay. So our sectional theme, land of promise, slavery, and sectionalism. Okay. People came here, all right, to live a good life. All right. The problem was we also had the slave trade in our country. Okay. So it was a land of promise for slaves who were coming over. Okay. So by the time we get to 1850, the United States consisted of 31 states, 23 million people, but you were split based on where you live. Okay. If you lived up north, you were completely against the Southern plantation way of life, or slavery-driven economy, cotton-driven economy in the South. Okay. And if you were in the South, you were completely against the free abolitionist movement, abolitionist theme in the North. Okay. Up in New England here, all right, the Middle Atlantic, this was your center for trade, finance, manufacturing. All right. A lot of money in those areas. All right. Money was more evenly spread throughout the North. In the South, if you were a plantation owner, you had a lot of money. Otherwise, you really didn't. Okay. The South, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, an agricultural economy based on king cotton and tobacco. All right. And that's where that slave labor really came into play. Okay. Plantation owners could not have own enough slaves at this time in order to meet their demands. So they were constantly pushing to purchase more slaves along the way. And if you remember from last week's lesson, all right, one of the things that came into play in the early 1800s in the South that would further speed up cotton production was the cotton gin. Okay. Plantations and slave owners in the South refused to give any thought to a life in the South that did not include slavery. Slavery was entrenched in the Southern way of life. It was a staple of their economy. They felt like if you remove slavery, you remove the South, because the economy would not be able to survive. All right. Up in the North, when you get into the Midwest, where we live, a whole lot more, you got your agricultural-based focus, corn, wheat, dairy, etc., that we see today. Okay. You go up into Wisconsin, you see dairy farms all over the place. Okay. Just to give you an idea. All right. Northern transportation was far more advanced than Southern transportation. Okay, there's a whole lot more railroads. There's a whole lot more ways linking the cities to the suburbs, the rural areas. All right, the South lagged way behind in transportation as well. Basically, you were where you were in the South. There was not any roaming around from what we call a suburb to the city. All right, or living in the suburbs and then working in the city by day, coming back to the suburbs at night. There wasn't any of that in the South. Okay, railroad was way behind. All right, they had few rivers, tributaries where they could go from one place to the next. All right, it was much more difficult to transport goods in the South. Okay, so that's just a little bit on the differences between North and South, and then you're going to see a series of events that further draw this line between North and South. All right, every event that you look at in our group activity today is going to be geared towards a further dividing line between Northern beliefs and Southern beliefs. Okay, and here's a nice little T-chart for you to see here. All right, the economic differences between North and South. All right, let's take a look at the right side first with the North, because you just have more of everything. All right, there's manufacturing and industry. You have the large city life, and you do have a little bit of rural life up in that area too. Even though it's not what we're going to see once we get into the population boom in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but it's there. Okay, railroads all over the place connecting your big cities. Okay, it's very good for trade. All right, obviously the anti-slavery movement. All right, more people had money in the North. All right, more even distribution of income, and they had a much larger population. Your bigger cities, obviously, they have larger population. There were far more bigger cities in the North than there were in the South. Okay, you can still see that to an extent today in our country, even though the population has started to even out a little bit. All right, you look at just Chicago alone, just under 3 million people, and then you got New York City that's way up there, close to 9-10 million people. Okay, so even today you start to see a little bit difference in population between North and South. Okay, but mainly linked to big cities today. All right, that's where your population is, even in the South. In the South, talking about economy, all right, you had some agriculture, you had the slave trade, King Cotton, or I should say you had slavery entrenched, not the slave trade by this time, but slave, the purchasing of slaves nonstop to meet the demands for cotton production triggered by the cotton gin. All right, you had your rivers, you had your very wealthy select few. Okay, the income was not distributed evenly in the South, and you had a much smaller population. Okay, so all of this is going to play a role in how our Civil War plays out. But for our focus in Unit 1, how do all these differences, these different beliefs, these different setups lead to a further division between North and South? Okay, and that's what we're going to be getting into our activity on today, is a little graphic organizer here of our conflicts, okay, and what they actually entail. Okay, here's a more updated remote learning version of it because we can't do the full activity like we would be in the classroom. Okay, so we're going to take a look at all these topics. Okay, I'm going to divide you off to groups here a little bit. All right, you're going to research your topic, whether it be on the internet, your Unit 1 notes, your Unit 1 reading packets. Okay, you're going to come up with a main idea of your topic, 3 supporting details, and then a description of how your topic divided the country. Okay, about 3 sentences for that. And I also want you to include a picture in your setup here. Okay, and then what you're going to do also is everybody's going to be working on the same document. So we're going to update this as we go. Okay, so don't worry about the space. Notice as you start typing in your supporting details, the boxes will get bigger. So you don't have to worry about your spacing here. It will grow as you type in the document. We're going to have 5 groups.